Hi, and welcome back to my channel, where I am going through the process of revisiting some of my earlier class-related videos. Within this video, we will be creating a level 1 cleric-based character using the character wizard that was introduced into Fantasy Grounds Unity. Unlike the cleric video I created back in 2020, this video is only going to focus on the base class elements for level 1, and while I will be selecting a domain, I will not be going over any of the details associated with that domain in this video. I will be creating a separate video for that purpose. And to help move things along, I'm going to go ahead and quickly jump into character creation. And to get at the character wizard, you're going to want to make sure that you click on this characters button. If you don't see it, it's probably because it's buried underneath this expandable icon here, or menu listing, I should say. So if you just click that, left click on the characters menu, and you'll get this window, of which you want to click on the character wizard here in the upper left. When you go through and create a character, you're going to start off with your stats, and that's generally the best practice when it comes to rolling a new character. There are a number of supported methods for actually going through and doing that, and in a lot of cases, a Dungeon Master is going to allow you to just simply do a dice roll. In this case, I'm going to be doing manual entry because I've already pre-rolled all of these stats, so I don't need to worry too much about that. I'm not going to be using the point buy system, nor am I using the standard array. I got very lucky when I went through and actually rolled these stats. And that's because I was just simply lucky, I guess. I don't know. There really isn't because there, now that I think about that statement. I might modify that in my script at a later point in time. But anyway, these are the stats that I rolled. And as you can see, I've got a very well top balanced character because I've got 3 16s, a 14, a 12, and a 10. And I've intentionally put these in this particular order because the idea here is that I'm going to ensure that our wisdom gets a bump in relation to the race selection that I have chosen. And there's not really a limitation there anymore when it comes to which stat gets a bump. You now have the ability to select different ones with the new rules introduced by Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. But generally, your Dungeon Master is going to more or less recommend the approach that they prefer in relation to entering the values that you have here, whether it's dice roll, standard array, or point buy. Once you have your stats entered here, you can go ahead and select the race tab here. And I'm going to choose a dwarf in this particular case, and I'm going to make sure that I choose the hill dwarf as the subrace. Now, what that does do is it flips wisdom and constitution as my 2 bonuses. So my wisdom goes up by 1 point, but my constitution gets a 2-point bump, leaving the intelligence really only as the mediocre stat, if you will. And to move things along, I'm just going to go ahead and select the Smith's tools here. Now, I ended up getting a race that had a sub-race selection here. Depending on the race you choose, this might not pop up, and these stats might be slightly different, as well as your tool proficiencies if there happens to be one for that particular race. There's going to be a different selection, essentially, for every different race that you choose if you wish to sort of look at each of the ones that are there. And you can kind of preview those by going ahead and just sort of clicking on this icon that you see here on the left side of the buttons. And then what that will do is that will pop open the information sheet. So you don't need to worry about going down here and actually popping them open, although this does give you a more complete list as to what's there. But you can do that all directly from the character wizard if you need to. Next, I'm going to go ahead and choose our Cleric class. And then the stats that I'm going to choose are Insight and Medicine. And I'm going to select the Knowledge domain for the time being, and that's going to allow me to select, I think it was Religion and Nature, if I'm not mistaken. And in this particular case, I'm going to choose Orc, as well as Celestial because of the, and if I can find it, there it is, because of the fact that this is a cleric, so there's a good chance that they will actually have acquired the Celestial language. At this point, you might have noticed that some additional buttons have now popped up, specifically our inventory, our spells, and this feats button kind of randomly appears depending on the kind of selections that you make in these 3 panels here. We're not going to worry about feats in this section because we won't have anything that we're going to be choosing from that panel. But what I do want to do next is the background, and I'm going to go ahead and select Sage. And then I'm going to choose Primordial and Abyssal as the next languages to counter out the Celestial language, and this will also deal with the elementals. So essentially, I'm setting up this character to be able to talk to all of the god-related races. And with that, you could theoretically choose to create your character right here and now. But the character wizard does grant you the ability to go through and select your inventory items as well as your spells. I'm going to once again just quickly burn through this just to try to be sure that I can get to the important bit, which is the spells here. And I want... This is always the tricky bit. I always seem to fall into amulet, so today I'm going to go ahead and choose emblem. And there are other options when it comes to equipment selection. You can go ahead and click this button and do individual purchasing, but then you're going to be expected to ensure that your character has the gold. This option here is really only useful if you're not creating a level 1 character, but creating one that is a much higher level. Generally, if you're creating a level 1 character, you're just going to simply want to choose the quote-unquote starting equipment that is included with the class and or the backgrounds. Next, I'm going to go ahead and select the spells listing here. And we are going to acquire 3 cantrips right off the start. So, in order to add a spell, it's no longer possible, as you can see, I'm trying to drag that spell down. It's no longer possible to drag and drop a spell into this window. You can't do it by the name, and you can't do it by the icon. What you actually have to do is click on these green arrows here. So I'm going to choose that, Spare the Dying, and Sacred Flame to give me something that I could theoretically use if I run out of spells in a combat-based scenario. And depending on the domain you choose, you might have additional cantrips that are available to you to choose from. Not necessarily additional spells from this list, but definitely an increased number of them. Before I move on to selecting our level 1 spells, there's something I want to point out here. And that is that depending on the class you choose, this is going to have a default selection. Because we selected the Cleric class, it actually started here at the Cleric selection screen for our spells. If you chose, say, Bard, it would select this by default and then provide that as the listing. So you don't have to worry about misgetting, if you will, any spells that wouldn't normally be applied to your Cleric class. Additionally, your domain-specific spells aren't being listed here. So we're going to want to double check that when we go through and get our character created, that those spells are automatically added to our character sheet. So let's go ahead and select the 4 level 1 spells that we're going to be able to use for our character. And in this particular case, I'm going to take Cure Wounds, Healing Word, Sanctuary, and Guiding Bolt for our character. And we've essentially completed our spell selection at this point. If we had additional level related slots here that we could actually go through and make use of, then what would happen is we'd have level 2 spells here, level 3 spells here, level 4 spells here if you were creating a higher level character. And as indicated before, we're not going to have any feats that we have to go through and click on. But in order to save our character, I'm going to want to give it a name. In this case, I'm going to call it the Cleric base class. Oops. There we go. And then hit commit. And that'll create our character sheet and load our character here in the upper left corner, and we can get rid of this window now. So the first thing we'll want to do is be sure that our domain-related spells are in this list. I'm not going to show that here because I'm going to cover that as part of the domain-specific spells, but that will be the first thing that you want to do. I'm just mentioning that here because level 1 is when you create this character, and level 1 is when you acquire that domain. You will want to focus on the domain that you selected in relation to that video to determine which spells you'll be adding here, or you can just refer to the list that you have here in the information sheet. We will also want to make sure that we check to see if there's any abilities in this list or traits in this list that will give us anything here that we'll want to potentially make use of. And I'm pretty certain Dwarven Toughness or Resilience might require a effect to be applied to our character, so we could look at that. But I'm going to quickly take a glance at these just to see if there's anything that does need to be added here, and then we'll go from there. So I'm going to go ahead and just minimize these for the time being. Load this up, and then I'm going to create a new effect here. I'm going to call it Dwarven Resilience. This isn't really class specific, but it does relate to our character. Semicolon, and I'm going to put in resist, colon, poison. And it's all lowercase. And it's going to be only on your own character, and it does not go away because it's a permanent change. And that way, when you're in the combat tracker, all you have to do, which I haven't added this character in yet, all you have to do is ensure that you click this effect here, and it will automatically apply it to your character. In respect to, or with respect to Dwarven Resilience, I should say, at the time that you're being asked to make a saving throw, ask the Dungeon Master if the poison effect is going to be involved. And if they say yes, then you get to collect this advantage. If they ask why, you can say, I have Dwarven Resilience, and I am going to gain advantage on those saving throws. And then they'll be able to tell you whether to enable or disable the advantage button here. You then make your saving throw roll, and then you're good to go. Beyond that, there's nothing else that we have to do. As you can see, the new character wizard has improved the efficiency at going through and creating a character that has spellcasting capabilities. It's no longer a mishmash of everything, although it might still take you time to choose the different spells that you want. You might have to open one up and look at it and then go, no, I don't want that, and look at another. That's where the time will come into play now. It's you defining what your character can do, not you trying to figure out the mechanics of how to create that character. With that, however, that completes this particular video. In the next video, we will be looking at leveling our character up from level 2 to level 10. Hopefully, I'll get to level 10 in that video. And explain all of the features gained, as well as where the spells come from with respect to that character. Thank you. I hope you found this video useful and informative, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.